We transition to a session that's as heartbreaking as it is important. A normal day in a normal town with some normal teenagers, turning a drive to get some ice cream and a trip to the park to anything but normal. Get this turned on as well. 16-year-old Addison Marker was driving her 14-year-old sister Claire and her 16-year-old cousin Megan Wieland home after getting ice cream and stopping by a park in Horace, North Dakota. Horace is just south of West Fargo, and the road the girls were on is the main road through Horace, 35 miles per hour. Some businesses, a coffee shop, and a dentist office on their right, a cemetery, and some housing on their left. It's a normal summer night for many of us with teenage drivers. It's dark, it's 10:30 at night. Addison was driving, going north towards West Fargo. Cousin Megan was in the front seat, and sister Claire was in the back in the middle seat. Coming southbound on that same road, an 18-year-old who was drunk. She was traveling at a high rate of speed. And advance for me. Of course. Let me see what this does. Give me just a second. Yeah. Okay. I don't have a plan B. We'll try this. Oh, you guys don't see what I see. PowerPoint is not responding. PowerPoint is trying to recover your information. Oh, okay. I'm going to roll this one more time, and then it's going to work. I always think it's funny when this happens to everyone else. Okay, again, girls northbound, coming southbound, 18-year-old drunk driver, and she's going at a very high rate of speed. You'll notice this set of headlights. Nope, that set of headlights. That's going southbound. This is the girls going northbound, and this is going to happen fast. And you can see the speed difference in that crash. I'm going to show it to you a couple different times in a couple different areas. The smoke and the reaction from the crash. Same look, just zoomed in. Drunk driver, girls. Down here, slowed down, drunk driver, girls. And you can really see the speed difference in how far backwards the girls were pushed. Immediately, the same neighbor whose video camera this came from dials 911. And you'll hear her call now.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
We're out on Chestnut Drive, or Cheyenne, Forest, across from the dental office. Car just blew up on the highway. We're not sure if it's the battery. It's a crash. It's a crash.
Okay, what's the... Okay,
We just heard a loud...
Forest?
Yep. Oh, God. Somebody screaming.
Okay. Yep, we have a deputy just getting on scene there. Do you...
Yep, they're just... Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
What?
So a couple of things. First, she thought it was an explosion. She thought a car exploded. Her husband goes outside, turns around and says, "Oh my God, it's a crash." She reports it's a crash. Runs across the field, and by the time she had run across the field and placed that 911 call, law enforcement was already there. That's how close law enforcement was to this crash. And we will find out some more on why, and then how this rescue wind. So our panelists, and they'll come up here one at a time as they speak. Deputy Craig Keller from Cass County Sheriff's Office was the first responding officer that night. You heard how quick he was at that call. Cass County is contracted for the city of Horace. Horace doesn't have city PD, so Cass County is the guy, is the man at there. Chief Chris Mahoney from Southern Valley Fire, which is the rural fire department in Horace, which happened to be just down the street. So he'll talk about his portion. Sue Fowler from the Kindred Ambulance Service. Kindred Ambulance responded to this. Of course, Fargo was closer, but Kindred had to respond. And I think we'll touch on that just a little bit. And then Captain Brian Newen from the North Dakota Highway Patrol will talk about his services in this crash as well. So let me welcome from the Cass County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Craig Keller. Turn sideways.
Okay. True law enforcement fashion, I had to use my my Think book to do this. You'll also probably find out why I am a deputy and I prefer to work nights. Public speaking is not my forte, so we'll give it a whirl. And I got my stopwatch going, Ryan. So, all right. So as Ryan said, I'm Deputy Craig Keller. I'm with the Cass County Sheriff's Office. I began my law enforcement career in 2014 as a reserve deputy with Cass County. In 2017, or shortly before that, I went and put myself through school, got my associate's degree in criminal justice. In 2017, the reserve deputy portion wasn't scratching the itch, so I put myself through academy and was eventually hired November 4th, 2017, as a full-time patrol deputy. In 2021, I was contracted, as Ryan said, in the city of Horace. Typically, we do 2 years at a time. I've grown to love the city of Horace, and so I continually keep asking to stay in Horace. I'm going on my 5th year. I'm also an FTO, SFST instructor, and I oversee our bike unit, snowmobile team, and I'm a designated marksman with our office. Last year, I sat in the audience and I listened to, I believe it was the Larimore bus crash debrief. Never did I think I'd be standing up here a year later, giving my own debrief. On July 13th, 2024, I was on a patrol shift in Horace, as I've done for the last 4 years. I had an event to go for with my boys' soccer the next day, so I was doing my best to stay out of trouble. I was working on some paperwork, emails, sitting on the side of County Road 17, just south of 64th Avenue South. There's a roundabout there. As I was sitting there, I observed a vehicle rapidly approaching me from the north. As I got closer, I could see 3 young gentlemen trying to frantically get my attention. As they got closer, I rolled down my window. The young men were quickly telling me about an impaired driver they had come across that they tried to get to pull over and offered to give a ride to. I could tell by the look on their faces and the tone of their voice that it was serious. Just then, they pointed to the south of my location where there was 2 vehicles traveling southbound on County Road 17. Just then, one of the 2 vehicles turned eastbound into a housing development. The young men informed me that they believed that was the impaired vehicle. I immediately threw my squad into gear and gave chase. I caught up to that vehicle just as it pulled into a driveway of a home. As I was getting out of my squad to confront that driver, the vehicle with the 3 young men pulled up. They informed me that this was the wrong vehicle and that it was the other one that continued southbound. I immediately jumped back into my squad and took off after the other vehicle. Continued southbound on County Road 17 through the roundabout at 76th Avenue South. As I came out of the roundabout, there's not many hills in Cass County, but there's a slight one coming out of that roundabout. I crested the hill and observed what we just watched, my worst fear. I could see what appeared to be a major head-on crash that occurred at Main Street and 6th Avenue North in Horace. I pulled up to the crash seconds later, and the first thought that ran through my head was how many fatals. I ran over the first vehicle, which contained Addison, Claire, and Megan. As I approached the vehicle on foot, I could hear Megan, who was in the front passenger seat, screaming in pain. I then observed Addison and Claire sitting on the ground next to the driver's side of the vehicle. I now knew I had at least four patients, as the 3 girls and then the suspect driver in the other vehicle. Being by myself, I immediately radioed to dispatch that I need more people. I knew I could not care for all 4 patients by myself, so I began to triage the girls. I went to Addison and Claire, and at this point, people from nearby housing who had heard the crash began to arrive on scene and assist any way they could. After checking on Addison and Claire, I checked on the suspect who had a large head injury from hitting her head on the windshield due to not wearing a seatbelt. After my initial assessments, I ran to my squad and retrieved my medical bag. I then ran back to Addison and Claire, sat my medical bag down on the ground, opened it up, and told the Good Samaritans who were there helping to take whatever they needed. I grabbed a large bandage and took it to the suspect vehicle. Being that she was still awake and alert, I handed her the bandage and instructed her to provide herself self-care. I then returned my attention to Megan, whom after my initial assessment, I determined to be the most critical. Megan was screaming in pain, but otherwise unresponsive. Her door was pinned shut due to the head-on collision, so I returned to my squad and retrieved my Helligan and sledgehammer. I, along with the assistance of another Good Samaritan, attempted to use the tools to pry the door open, but were unsuccessful. Sometime during the commotion, the original young men showed up to the crash scene and were now lending a hand. At one point, I remember setting my breaching tools down, and as I turned around, I saw one of the young men pry the top of the door down using his bare hands. It's a pretty amazing feat. In doing so, the window broke, and I now had access to Megan. I attempted to talk to Megan, but she would not respond and only screamed and thrashed in pain. I wanted to climb in the back of the vehicle to hold her C-spine, but being the only first responder on scene, I needed to maintain some type of control of the crash scene. I then made the decision to cut Megan's seatbelt, thinking it would help calm her down. It didn't work. Megan continued to scream and thrash around in pain. I felt helpless. All I could do was hold her hand and talk to her. I then heard more sirens coming from the south, and I knew it was going to be Southern Valley Fire and Rescue. As much as it pains me to say what I'm about to say, it was a relief to hear fire coming. So, all of you law enforcement know how hard that is for me to say. And I knew they would be in great hands. As the next person I'm about to introduce, Southern Valley Fire and Rescue Chief Chris Mahoney.
Hi. Thank you, Craig. So we were the responding fire department. We have a quick response unit for the EMS side. We were actually initially paged. We didn't understand the significance of this car wreck. Our initial page showed an iPhone call, like someone dropped their iPhone and that's what called originally, until we could hear the panic in dispatch's voice from the report they were getting from Deputy Keller. Like they were saying, our firehouse was just right down the street. It was only a few minutes of response. Pulling out of the station, we could see the amount of debris in the roadway. And the cars, one of them partially in the ditch, and one in the center of the road. But from our firehouse, we could see the damage. We knew it was going to be a high impact, potential for catastrophe. And from a distance, we could tell that this was probably a high certainty that there may be a loss of life. We showed up on scene. I established command. I made contact with Deputy Keller to see what he needed right off the gate. We still had one in the vehicle. Addison and Claire were actually located in the ditch behind the vehicle. They had gotten out, so we had assigned staff members to treat them and assess them and stay with them. We had our engine crew go to the door. The way the vehicle looked in those pictures don't do it justice on even the inside of the vehicle. It took our crews quite a while to cut it. As soon as we established the command, we asked for an ETA from the local ambulance service. That's when dispatch notified us that they didn't have any available at the time. So that's when we quickly requested Kindred, and Sue will talk next, but we called them and we were specifically requested both of their ambulances and Life Flight. Even with Sanford being not too far, the trauma hospital being not too far from where the crash was, advanced care for Megan in that passenger vehicle. The duration from being able to cut that vehicle up enough to get her out safely, the helicopter was landed in the church parking lot right next to the incident. We were fortunate enough because the church parking lot that the helicopter landed in is actually one that we train at quite a bit with the sheriff's office and our department and the flight team. So they were very familiar on landing there. The Claire and Addison, when we were looking at their injuries, there was probably more internal. They had some cuts and bleeding. But Megan was our biggest concern. By the time we got up to the vehicle, we were able to get one of our firefighter EMTs in the back seat to help stabilize and talk to her. There was no talking to us. We actually were going down the route of a very severe head trauma. She stopped screaming. Pupils were not reactive. We were kind of thinking the worst. It's actually great to see them sitting here today because we did not think that was the outcome when the flight team got there. Once we were able to cut her out of the car, we were able to safely get her out and then load it up. We did have another ambulance end up showing up, and then we were able to put her in the back of that ambulance until the flight team was able to make it to the ambulance and transfer her off and get her flown out. The time from the helicopter landing and getting her loaded up and back in the air to the trauma center was roughly only like 6 minutes, I think, Greg. So it was pretty quick. But with all the staff that we had on there, we were able to mitigate a lot of this. As you can tell from some of those pictures we had, there was fluids all over the place, floor dry, car parts. We actually had vehicles still driving even at 11 o'clock at night through the scene. Traffic management it was all hands on deck to try to mitigate these two vehicles. It's like I said, it's just great to actually see them sitting here because we did not think that was going to be our outcome. From the fire side, our biggest challenge was keeping the car in a stable condition. Like in this picture, you can see that light pole that was behind it. They were less than an inch from climbing up on top of it, knocking it over, and causing more hazards for us. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Sue Fowler from Kindred Ambulance to speak next.
Good afternoon. I'm Sue from Kindred Ambulance Service. And I was one of the 2 ambulances that responded to this scene on June 13th. So basically, we had a crew of 4 at our ambulance garage that evening. We had just gotten back from another call. We're washing the bugs off, heard the page come in on our radio. We all kind of looked at each other. Well, this isn't our area. This is Sanford. So didn't really think anything of it. We were closing the door, about to leave, and then our tones went off. So we were requested as Sanford ambulance was status 0, so that means they didn't have any ambulances available to respond. They page out the next closest unit. So that was us. So we had 2 ambulances en route to the scene. Inside my ambulance was myself and then a driver, and we kind of discussed, well, this shouldn't be too bad. I mean, it was right in town, so shouldn't be anything too serious. When we get to the scene, this is your job, this is my job, what to expect when we get there. So we pulled up to the scene, stopped, just got out, sized up the scene, and I got out and took a look at that vehicle and said, holy wow, what the heck? Walk around, get out of the ambulance, walk and see that Claire and Addison sitting on the side of the road. I was instructed by Incident Command Mahoney to go and look at the other patient of the other vehicle. So I approached her and she was swearing and screaming and not wanting to cooperate. So I looked at one of the deputies and said, if you want me to take her, then you're coming with in the ambulance because I'm not having her jump out of the ambulance on me. So they quickly instructed me that, she would not be being transported by ambulance. And then I was instructed to go and do patient care to Claire. So I approached her and she was sitting, like I said, alongside the road, just sitting, waiting for an ambulance ride. The other EMT, who happens to be my sister, took Addison. So Claire, when I got there, so the Southern Rescue had C-spine maintained. They actually had her in a KED board, so they were concerned about head, neck, and also torso. And then she had a bandage around her head because she had a significant laceration on her head. So we, as a team, got her lifted up, loaded into the ambulance, and the other EMT that was on the call, my sister Dawn, was with Addison, quickly got them both into our ambulances. So we were from the on-scene time and patient care, which a lot of that was very great. They have a great group of people at their rescue squad, so it was very easy for us. So from time on scene to we got into the ambulance for transport and I called a trauma code was 9 minutes. In the ambulance, I had Claire, and she was telling me her back hurt. She had, they both had some injuries to the back, legs, arms. I mean, you're in shock, so you kind of don't feel a lot of pain at that time, but pretty emotional. Both girls, wonderful young women, worried about each other, and most importantly, about their cousin Megan. I told Claire she wanted to give her mom a call, and her phone, of course, was destroyed. I said, I promise you, I will take out my phone. I will call your mom, we will talk to her, but I need to get a set of vitals, check you out, and call in my trauma code first. And I promise you, I will give you my phone to call your mom. Yep, she was, anything, you can do anything, just no needles. Deal, I don't do needles. So we get all that done. I call Sanford, give a trauma code with, letting them know we have 2 girls coming in with us, 1 helicopter, and then there was another possibly being transported by law enforcement. Now the trauma code was called due to the mechanism of injury, the intrusion of that vehicle, significant. We didn't think anyone in that car would be alive when we got there. So they were well aware that we were coming in with individuals that had significant injury. Then I get to my phone and I call Claire's mom. And I first talk to her and just kind of tell her, I have your daughter and your other one's in our other ambulance. They were in an accident. They're awake, talking, really scared, emotional, have some injuries, worried about Megan. And tell her, I kind of first assumed she was still in Jamestown, so I'm like, if you're driving here, just be safe, maybe have someone else drive you, a neighbor, don't want you getting into an accident. And she had told me that she was still in Fargo, would meet us at the hospital. And then I gave the phone to Claire. And she talks to her mom and is crying, telling her, they were in this accident and she's worried about Megan. She didn't know how she was, if she was going to if she would make it. And they have a little moment and then they say a prayer together. I've never will forget that, ever. We hang up the phone, continue en route, get to the hospital. And I warned her, when we get there, there's going to be a whole bunch of people there. Asking you questions, doing this, I can't promise no needles, but there's going to be a lot of people there. So I get into the room, give my report to the team in the room that I took Claire to, tell them what was going on, tell them, you know, they were out for ice cream, the whole situation, everybody heard they were out for ice cream. She was sitting in the back, in the middle. They were traveling 35, 40 miles an hour, unaware, unsure, not knowing what the speed of the other vehicle was. Give them vitals, everything that we found en route. And I turned to walk out the door, and there's standing a lady dressed in street clothes. And I said, "Oh, well, you must be Mom." And she looked at me and said, "No, I'm the trauma surgeon." We leave, and as we're getting out, cleaning our ambulance and so forth, then we ended up seeing them bring Megan in, and it's just great to see all three of you here. I did get a little bit of an update on some of the injuries from Mom like a day or two later. I know this accident is something you guys will never, ever forget. But these are the ones, the accidents when you respond to, and you have sons, daughters, cousins, nephews, you never want to see happen, and these are the ones that we don't ever forget either. And I'm just so happy to see that you guys are all okay and here today to talk about it and try to prevent something like this from happening to anybody else. And that being said, I would like to introduce Brian from the North Dakota Highway Patrol.
Good afternoon, I'm Brian Newand. I'm a captain with the North Dakota State Patrol, and you're wondering why is a captain up here talking about a crash? Like, command staff, they never go to crashes. Well, it just so happened that night I was on call, and if you talk to the troopers in our region, they regret when I'm on call because stuff like this happens. And one thing I want to kind of talk about here is teamwork. And for us, we had a team out there. Trooper Steenstrup was the only trooper that was working that night. He initially responded, and he's actually in the room here today. He was on our honor guard presentation at the beginning of the meeting here today, and is here for the conference as well. And then we had two troopers that worked the next day that had to help us with that crash investigation. As we're processing that crash scene that night, you know, the next day we can't work 24 hours and keep going. So we have a team of people that we work with. And anytime you have one of these incidents, it's a team that's working through those investigations. So one of our sergeants, Sergeant Christian Halgo, and one of our troopers, Greg Conlon, were the ones that actually assisted with us finding the different videos that you are seeing here and some of the pictures that we have of this crash scene. But the teamwork goes beyond that. Just think about, there's 4 agencies that we've talked about here that have been up here talking about this crash. It's always teamwork. Teamwork, we can't do this by ourselves. Deputy Keller couldn't do it by himself. The fire department couldn't do it by themselves, ambulance service. We all work together. And everybody that's in law enforcement, that's in EMS and fire departments in this room knows that. You know, in North Dakota, we're a small state. You know, think about this is basically in Fargo, and there was not an ambulance available. Think about that, right? We had to get an ambulance two ambulances out of Kindred. So we have to work as teams, and it's important that we really understand that. And for this case, we're talking about volunteers, right? Across North Dakota, all the different volunteers that volunteer at fire departments, ambulance services. We have reserve deputies that work, you know. I wear this uniform, I get paid to do this job. They don't. They go out there and do that every day. So it's just amazing seeing that dedication that individuals have to their communities to make them better. And you can see the emotion that, you know, when we have these incidents, the emotion that we invest in this as well, because we can see this might be our friends, our family members as well. I'm just a vessel for kind of telling our story today for the Highway Patrol. You know, obviously we respond to this. We were not the initial agency that responded. The Sheriff's Department, when this crash happened, they requested us to come assist. We do have the technical capabilities to investigate crashes like this, to really understand why they happen, gather those facts, and provide that evidence that you need in these types of cases for the criminal court system. And so, you know, we had our one trooper working that night in Fargo. You think about Fargo, we had one trooper working that night in Fargo because of training, because of vacations, whatever else it is. But he was our resident expert. He's one of our crash reconstruction team members. So we had the person that we needed that night to be there to start that investigation. I'm thankful that he was out working that night. And if he wasn't and we called him, I know he would have came, but he was the one that was working that night. You know, think about this as just a normal summer night. You're out for ice cream. You're going to go enjoy John Pardee the next day, right? You're in town. It's a girls' kind of a weekend or week that week, and normal night. But you know, it's in the snap of fingers. Things just go. They just change and become abnormal, especially for the 3 girls here. I was a supervisor on call. I got called out. Trooper Strip was there. We went down. We did a scene size up, and what that kind of is just kind of looking around that scene to try and find that evidence and figure out exactly how this crash happened. And that involves just using your eyes. It involves taking pictures. We have a drone that we'll use that'll fly, that'll document the scene from above. We have engineering or surveying equipment. It's called a total station that'll go out there and we'll do some measurements as well. And we collect all that evidence that night. We're taking evidence from the scene. We're taking evidence from the cars. But that's all going on. And while we're doing that, the sheriff's department's still there. The fire department's still there. Again, we're a team. We have to work together to get these things done. You know, what we're looking for is why did this crash happen? And it was very apparent when we got on scene why this crash happened, because there was a vehicle that was traveling southbound on County Road 17 that crossed over into the northbound lanes and went head on with this vehicle. When we look for crashes, there's going to always, when 2 vehicles collide, there's always going to be a point of impact, and it's going to be gouges in the road. They were apparent. So we're looking for those types of things, and they were there. Again, we're on scene. We're collecting all that evidence with all those different tools that we have, and really the majority of that was going on was Trooper Steenstrup, because again, he's that expert that we have there. Working with the sheriff's department. Deputy Keller was at the hospital, dealing with the suspect in this case, who we've already heard was swearing, who was belligerent, who was basically being that drunk a-hole that a lot of us that work in law enforcement deal with. Not really, you know, taking responsibility for her actions that evening, and probably, in my opinion, since. But we're working through not only documenting this crash scene, but now we have a criminal case as well, right? And that's just a whole different realm, like getting search warrants for blood draws, which takes time, making sure that we follow all the steps that we have to make sure we're documenting this case to bring it to for those criminal charges to get a conviction at the end of the day. It's not just a crash, it's a criminal investigation. And I think too many times in North Dakota when we have serious injury and fatal crashes, a lot of just people think that they're accidents. They're not. If there's a death, it's a homicide. And I'll tell you what, the North Dakota Highway Patrol investigates 95% of the fatal crashes in North Dakota every year. Every one of them is a homicide. Our agency actually investigates the most homicides in North Dakota, but people don't think about it like that. They're actually homicides. So we do the best job that we can to make sure that we give those victims in those cases, those families of those cases, the closure that they might need, whether it's through a criminal conviction or through just understanding exactly how that crash happened. I went to the hospital that night after we got done with the crash scene, and I met with moms. I never saw the girls that night. You were being treated that night, but I met with moms. And I know dads were on the way. You were out having some fun of your own too, and imagine one of the worst phone calls all of you received that evening. But it was at least nice to see you, understand what was going on, and we could just touch base that night, right? So in the following days, again, I met dads, I met some siblings throughout their recovery at the hospital. You know, one of the things we kind of talk about is we do invest in these types of incidents. We want to know how you're doing, see how you're doing. We maybe don't always reach out, we're not always asking those questions, but we're following these types of cases throughout the days and weeks that come. And we're just there to try and help provide as much information for those families as we can. And hopefully we did that. We have a crash assistance program within our agency. We had 2 civilians that work for us that we can kind of really rely upon in these types of situations that provide victim services to individuals that we deal with through investigations of our own. And we did in this case as well. But again, it's just phone calls, making sure they have what they need, answering their questions. If there's something missing, like a phone or whatever it is, we're helping them get through those types of things. And, you know, ultimately, again, this is teamwork. It's a teamwork through the on-scene initial stuff, through the ongoing investigation, all the way through the reconstruction. So Jake Jones was up here on the stage a little bit ago. He's one of our reconstructionists. So he was the one that actually reconstructed this crash. And through that reconstruction, some of the results of it, okay, so the suspect vehicle in this case was a Buick SUV. It was about 1,200 pounds heavier than the vehicle that Addison was driving. And the vehicle was going faster as well. So when we talk about the first presentation, we talk about energy, right? Well, that Buick was traveling 45 miles per hour, roughly in that 35 mile per hour zone, okay? So we think, 10 miles per hour is not a big deal, right? Well, Addison was driving a car, and her vehicle was going anywhere from 19 to about 35 miles per hour when we talk about some of those differences when we do reconstruction. So there's potentially almost a 10 to 25 mile per hour difference between those two different vehicles, plus that vehicle is heavier. All that energy is being transferred from that Buick into their car. And that energy is then absorbed by those bodies inside that car. When we talk about injuries, that's the mechanism of injury, is because of that transfer of all that energy. Seatbelts, obviously seatbelts are very important. We talk about Megan and Addison and girls wearing their seatbelts. If we're not wearing seatbelts in this case in that car, this is a different result. So, I mean, it's so important when we talk about survivor stories. This is a survivor story because they were wearing their seatbelts that night and they were able to survive this crash. I want to just say remarkable response from Deputy Keller, from the young gentlemen here that I know are here today as well, that initially reported this vehicle that was driving recklessly. And all the other individuals that stopped and helped. Anytime we have one of these crashes in North Dakota, people come out of the woodwork and help. And it happened in this case as well. It was our pleasure to help with this investigation. I know we received a successful guilty plea in this with the prison sentence, which I think was important. And I want to recognize the three girls here. I mean, you think about how brave they are. Number one, they're survivors, okay? Number two, they're here in front of this whole group. They're going to get up on stage after me and talk as well. And such a powerful message, Dan talked about earlier today storytelling. I think Vision Zero does a good job of storytelling. There's all kinds of stories out there, but we can always do a better job with that. But you girls have a great story, survivor story. And for moms and dads as well, for you being here and supporting this and supporting our Vision Zero mission, I appreciate that as well. So, thank you.
Okay, girls, moms, come on up. As they make their way up here, I want to thank the first responders. That's a group that doesn't work together every single day, but all of you do that all of the time. So to the first responders in this room and in that crash, thank you. That's Vision Zero. That's how we get to zero. So thank you to the first responders. Okay, let's see. Is this one on? Check. We have Addison, who was driving that night. Claire, who was in the back seat. We have Megan, who was in the front passenger seat. We have Paula, who is mom to the Marker girls. And we have Heidi, who is mom to Megan. That's a lot to hear. We're going to start with Claire. What's it like to hear those guys talk, but know that they're talking about you?
I feel like it's definitely odd because, even in sports, I never got any injuries, mainly because, my mom's a physical therapist, so I kind of, can't because I have to do all these workouts to prevent stuff. So it's definitely different because, it's just so weird. I've never really been injured to this deep of a level.
Megan, you have no memory of this crash.
Yeah, absolutely none. I had a serious concussion, and yeah, I haven't remembered anything for a week after and a few days before the crash.
You've heard the stories, obviously. This happened this past summer, so we're only a handful of months old. But to hear this today, a whole new range of emotions, I would assume, and hearing some things for the very first time.
I think just knowing that my cousins went through all that, like obviously I was in it, but I don't remember anything. But hearing what they remember just kind of kills me.
I'm going to read through their injuries. Addison, fractured vertebrae, has already had one back surgery and just learned that you need a second back surgery. A broken foot, had surgery on that as well. And some pretty serious internal injuries. Claire, a lacerated spleen, multiple face lacerations, and 5 vertebrae fractures. Megan, fractured vertebrae. You have gone through 2 back surgeries already. And a very significant concussion. Those are all the physical things. Let's talk briefly about the mental things. They're just as real. Megan, you want to start?
I think just waking up every day and seeing your scar. And I don't remember anything, but I would never wish this upon anyone. Just changes you as a person.
I think it definitely, yeah, like Megan said, I don't think I would ever wish this upon anyone. It was definitely not a night you want to remember. I think I definitely, like certain little aspects are very more serious about it, and yeah, it's definitely going to be a mental scar.
Addison?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely stick with us all forever, and it kind of helps me understand more seriously how you need to take driving seriously and like be safe with it all.
All 3 of you missed out on a summer of fun. As a teenager, life literally put on hold for an entire summer. In your own words, what do you think you missed out on last summer? We'll start on this end and work our way back down. What'd you miss out on?
Oh gosh. All of the friendship stuff, I guess. I couldn't do like any of the basic summer things. I was mainly just stuck in my house in like my recliner in the living room. Some friends would come see me, but it sucked not being able to go out and like go to the fair, go out on the water, all the random little things that are actually a lot bigger.
I definitely missed out on all of my summer sports and stuff. I remember when the EMTs came up to me right away, I was like, so am I going to the concert tomorrow and am I going to play next weekend? Like, I definitely missed out on all of that, and it was just like a bummer, and having to sit at your house, sit on your couch and just do nothing all summer was not ideal.
Honestly, just like memories with like friends, just being a teenager. I don't know, just working especially. I had to quit my job. Haven't had one since.
All of you were set to go to the John Party concert the next night. You shared with me a video that John Party sent you guys, addressed to the girls. It was special, I assume, but nice to hear from a superstar like that who had you in his thoughts and in his prayers. Paula, let's go to you. From a mom's perspective, the first time you knew something was wrong, you got a text from Sue in the ambulance, carrying your daughter. Terrifying. Put that into words.
Heidi and I kind of had an inkling. We looked at our clock and I texted all 3 separately and then called all 3 separately, and we just started to, I don't know, I think as a mother you sometimes feel these things. So Heidi went to find her phone, and right at that instant I got the text that said, "This is Sue from the Kindred Ambulance. I have your daughter Claire." And my heart just raced. My stomach went up into my throat. I screamed to Heidi. I'm like, "Heidi, this is the text I got." We frantically dialed back. It was, in your head, you like to think you're gonna piece it together. Where could they be? How could this, you're trying to connect the dots and all you have is one dot, and it was so great that Sue called us and gave us any amount of information. Being able to talk to Claire, say a few prayers, hear that everyone was awake and alive. And yeah, Heidi and I jumped in the car and called the dads, and they were an hour and a half away. It seemed like a 3-hour drive to Sanford, which was, 10 blocks away. It was a very long couple of hours. But yeah, just grateful when we got in there and put eyes on everybody, and they all knew who we were and who they were, and they could wiggle their toes. And
Heidi, when we planned this, which was quite a few meetings, I kept going back to these two moms saying, they just went out for ice cream. And those of you with teen drivers know what that's like, because that's normal. That's every single day. They just went for ice cream, and here we are. So they just went for ice cream. It was an innocent drive. And now this. What's your message? What's your recollection?
I don't even know how to put it into words, I guess. Your worst nightmare. For me, the hardest part was they couldn't tell me where Megan was. And I'm like, there's 3 of them. That was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I remember calling my husband and just said, you need to get here. I'm not doing this alone. So once I got eyes on her, I was like, okay. And it was just the 2 of us trying to be with 3 kids. And it was chaotic and it was terrible, but they were still themselves. And that to me was like so comforting. Like when something like this happens, you just don't know, are they going to be the same people? First you just hope to God they're alive, and then you're like, I hope their brain is still intact. And she was snarky even in the neck brace and everything else. So I was, after you pass the whole initial that, okay, everyone's alive and everyone's going to be okay. Their injuries are horrible, but as you can see, they're living. They're the same kids they were before the accident. It's just, it's been a long road, but they're here, and it could have been so different thanks to all the people that were there that night. And the first responders, way above and beyond. Captain Newen brought her shoes and her phone the next day. Deputy Keller was there until her husbands arrived so he could answer all their questions till 2 in the morning. I can't tell you what that means to have somebody that's a dad and a mom and just people there to listen and see her screaming in a car like that. I'm just so glad she wasn't alone. But they were all worried about each other. That's just the way they are. So.
Girls, I assume there's nights where it's still tough to fall asleep. I assume, like you talked about, it's changed some driving behaviors even for you guys. How do you think life has changed the most since the crash, either negatively or positively for you guys? Any one of you can handle that.
I guess it's kind of the way you look at it. Like, you can say what happened is negative, or you can look at the positive side and be like, we're still alive and we're still here. It's just the way you view it.
You asked how life changed, right? Okay. All the injuries, they continue to follow you, and they will the rest of your life, so that's a huge one. And just the whole accident, you can't really get away from it ever. There's always something like my foot hurts, or there's a new insurance letter in the mail, or a court date coming up. I don't know. It's become a big part of my life.
My parents are a lot more strict on what I do, which I understand where they're coming from, and just the whole aspect of being a teenager, like going to walk at the mall. My back starts to hurt after a few minutes, or after a few shops, and just there's a bunch of different outcomes. It just depends how you look at it.
For the first time since the night of the crash, the first responders are meeting the girls for the first time meeting these first responders. I didn't really tell you I was going to do this, but what do you want to say to them? Now that you've heard their story from their perspective, how do you put that into words?
Well, I saw in court they showed a video of me in the car, and was it Keller cutting my seatbelt, and the sound of me screaming and him just talking to me was, I don't know, I'm very grateful for all the help that you guys did.
I truly don't think you can put it into words because it's so like hard. I mean, having a sheriff that will stay after and talk to you, and just having Sue being there and allowing me to call my mom and everything. There's just no other words besides like, thank you.
Yeah, just a huge thank you for everything. It means a lot.
We're going to close like this. Have you thought about this crash every single day since it happened? Or is there a day you don't think about this?
No, I think about it every day. From the scar on my back to like just friends asking me how I am, and the whole court and just everything. I don't think I ever don't think about it.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a day that goes by where you don't think about it. It's like, I look in the mirror and it's like, oh, hey, there's a cut right in the middle of my nose. And then there's like so many other aspects of like pain and everything, and the way people talk about it and court dates and everything. There's really never not a day where you don't think about it.
I have to agree with those two. There's just a lot of little things that follow you.
This was not easy for any of you, for the dads as well, and the courage to come share your story in front of a ton of adult strangers is not easy. So we thank you. I truly believe stories like this make us better. They get us closer to zero. There's a whole nother side to this story that we will tell after 5 o'clock. The boys that helped with this crash are here. And they will tell their story in a roundtable type version at about 5:15, right after we have supper. They're going to tell their side of the crash, and then we're going to give them the first ever Heroic Citizens Award from Vision Zero as well. So we're going to honor those boys and hear from them and what they remember from that night as well.